All right, guys, welcome back to the Lowdown. I'm your host, Lorenzo Mercado, and today I'm joined by Nick Sehy. He is an investor based out of Seattle. He's doing big things over in Detroit, but I won't steal your thunder. So, Nick, welcome to the show.
What's up, Lorenzo? How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I know you have a lot of value to add to the listeners, so I'm really excited to get into your story. So maybe we could first start by talking about where you're at, how many deals you've done, and then maybe we can go into your backstory after that.
Yeah, so at this point, I've done at least 25 to 30 deals, and these are just including renovations. I haven't counted my wholesales. I started in January 2020, so I'm about the 5-year mark at this point. And the whole time I've been working for Microsoft, and I'm excited to make 2025 my best year yet. Currently in the middle of 5 flips, and I'm doing it while still working at Microsoft, and I'm excited.
Nice.
To see who I can help out.
Yeah, so you've done 25 projects, you said 25 renovations.
Yep.
And that includes a combination of like flips, wholesales, rentals, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I think just 25 just with flips and rentals. I honestly, I don't even know how many wholesales I did, but those are at least 10 or 20 of them.
Okay.
When I was doing those.
Okay. Well, if you wouldn't mind just telling the listeners how much you cash flowing right now, but based on all the different properties that you have.
I'd say I'd average about 300 a month on each of these properties. I'm in about 12 rentals, I believe, so probably about 3,600 a month.
Okay.
4,000, yeah.
Awesome. And so what did you do before real estate? Did you always kind of have the investing mindset, or how did you even get into this?
No, so, I just started working at Microsoft out of college, so I started at 3 at Microsoft, and I realized like early on I didn't know if I want to do this my whole life, and I need some type of exit strategy. So I started just reading books. Real estate always caught my eye because I knew a lot of people that do it to, number one, just for wealth, and number two is kind of a side income, passive income. And I read a book from Scott Trench, who's the CEO of BRRRR. It's called Set for Life. And that book actually doesn't really go too much into real estate, but it does go into the importance of owning your own primary house and the power of real estate and how much wealth you can build just from owning one primary home. But then in that, he kind of hinted at the BRRRR strategy. He's like, oh, if you want to supercharge your portfolio, do the BRRRR strategy. And then after I did that, I went down the David Green route. So David Green wrote the BRRRR book, he wrote the out-of-state investing book. So I read both of those, and both of those like led me to do BRRRRs and out of state in Detroit. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got down the BRRRR route. And right now I'm doing flips just because of with the interest rate environment we're in right now. There are a few houses I can still do rentals on, but it's not as nearly as common as flips right now, just with where the interest rates are at, unfortunately.
You said that the Scott Trench book, Set for Life, was one of your favorites. That's definitely one of my favorite books also.
Yeah.
I always tell everyone to read that. If people don't know what BRRRRing is, maybe you could talk about what BRRRRing is. Yeah,
so BRRRR is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially what it is, it's a process in real estate that allows you to continue to renovate a house. And then after you renovate the house, you can take a certain amount of equity from that new value of the house and then get your initial capital back. The example I usually give people is, say you buy a property for $50,000 and on that block there's houses selling for $100,000. If you renovate that house, and it only takes $25,000 to renovate that house to be $100,000 house, after you renovate it, and then you go to the bank, and then the bank says, okay, we can give you $75,000 on that $100,000 house. Then essentially they'll give you a loan for $75,000 and you mortgage on the house, and then you got your whole capital back because you spent $50,000 on the purchase, $25,000 on the rehab, and so now you're $0 invested in that house, and then you put a tenant in, and the house continues cash flowing over time, and you have $0 invested, so it's a infinite investment, and then you just keep doing that process and buy more houses.
Yeah, and that seems like a really popular thing to do. When the interest rates were like 2-3%, it's a really hard thing to do now. Have you found any success trying to do that right now with the current interest rate?
In Detroit, there's some rough areas where you're buying $0 to $50,000 properties, and you only have to put like $50,000 into it. And then like when the ARV is 120 and the rent's like 1,300 or 1,400, you can still make it work.
Yeah.
with $300 or $400 in cash flow. But usually when I pencil out the numbers now on it's $0 to $100 in cash flow. Even in Detroit, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that what you're seeing too, where you're investing, or?
I haven't looked too much into the BRRRR strategy, to be honest, but I think just in California in general, it's just hard to cash flow. It's all about the equity play here, and if you're okay with paying into it and losing money, honestly, I think for the first several years, I think you'd be fine. But for where I'm at right now, that's definitely not something I'm looking for, and
Yeah,
so that's why I'm focusing on flipping in right now.
so you're more. This isn't your interview, but I'm just interested.
Yeah.
So you're more interested in just like the flipping and building capital route at this point, and like.
Yes.
Okay.
So right now my focus is definitely just building up my active income. I don't even want to think about rentals until I have cash. I think a lot of people just talk about the rental route, and people save up all this money just to buy something that cash flows a couple $100, and then it takes forever to save it for something else. And for me, it's all about the speed of money also. And right now I know that I need to increase my income as much as possible. So I don't even want to think about buying anything yet. So until I have I don't know, 500,000 to $1 million flipping business.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I understand. Yeah.
What made you choose? So you're doing everything in Detroit. How'd you choose Detroit? Because you said you live in Seattle, right?
Yeah. So when I initially started out, I didn't want to do Seattle just because it's so expensive here. So I knew if I messed up here in Seattle, playing with 100, 200,000, there's a possibility when I finish my flip that's totally wiped out.
Yeah.
I totally just mess up the numbers or something. So I decided to do Detroit, just because it's a lot cheaper. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I still have relatives that live there.
Got it.
So I knew, I knew I knew I had a support system there as well if stuff goes wrong.
So you had some boots on the ground out there to check on the house.
And number three, even the numbers at that point weren't pointing. I think when I started investing there, the population was basically stable, declining a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew going to the city every year, there's a lot of investment that continues going into that city from billionaire investors. Still recently, the last year, the population finally started increasing. It's kind of been a going trend like this sort of. And I know the city's been reversing, so I knew I wanted to be a part of that as well.
Got it.
And every year I go there, the city just continues making strides. And I think reason number four at this point, it's so much easier to find deals in Detroit versus Seattle / Los Angeles or high demand markets like Austin or whatever. And then reason number five, let's keep going over reasons.
Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going. At this point, I knew I wanted to do BRRRR strategy, and if I'm able to renovate cheap houses, I know that when I finish, if I just keep doing cheap houses, I'll have a lot of cash flow after the fact.
Agree. I think that going out of state when something is cheaper is a great way to just dive into it and get started, because as you said, getting started in a high cost market like San Francisco or Seattle, mistakes can be very costly. In my first flip alone, we ended up losing, unfortunately, and me and my partners each lost 20,000. It could have been way worse. If the first one went well, the second one, maybe I would have got ballsy and went for a much bigger project that could totally wipe me out if things went wrong. So I agree that going into these lower price markets is a great way. It's scary because obviously it's a lot further away, but I think if you can figure out how to do things and just get into the mode of taking action, I think that's just the most important thing.
Yeah, I think a thing too, people don't realize, it kind of forces you to figure out how to delegate and work with other people too. I know these people flip in their backyard or something, and they're always trying to fix the sink or whatever, do the manual hands-on stuff, but it's not optimal for scaling any type of business. So it kind of forces you to think about, how can I plug in people? How can I build the relationships I need to grow a business, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Where in Detroit are you doing all this stuff? Is it in Detroit proper? Or is it on the outskirts?
Detroit proper, yeah. It's not. I don't mess around with the suburbs.
Okay. I've never been to Detroit, so I have no idea what it's like over there.
Yeah, so there's Detroit proper, then there's the suburbs, lower, very racially divided. I only do the inner city because that's where I find the best deals in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of the opportunity is in Detroit these days.
Got it. So going back, you read the books. How long did it take you before looking for your first deal? For me personally, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, read books for a while. Probably I'd say maybe 6 to 8 months before I went to my first real estate event, and then eventually I joined a coaching program. How long did it take you before you actually started taking action?
So I think 2018 or 2019 I read that Scott Rich book, and I'd say probably, I know for a while I looked in San Antonio.
Hmm.
I went to San Antonio and I was like, damn, I'm penciling out all these deals and like none of these things make sense. So I got to move to a different market. And I was like, okay, I'm from Detroit. I'll just figure out Detroit. And then, Detroit, I was able to figure out the numbers. And, I'm sure there's stuff I looked at in San Antonio that would have made sense, but I think there was a lot of analysis paralysis at that point as well. I just like maybe the roof cost like 20 grand more than I'm putting down on paper. I think it took like 6 to 8 months for me to get started.
So let's walk through your first deal. Maybe you can just give us the numbers on it.
So my first deal, I think my mom was scared shitless of what I was doing. So she was like, I'll do the first one with you. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's cool. So we did cash. We did a 50-50 deal. And I bought it for 47,000, which is
crazy. That is insane, dude. That is so
47.
crazy.
And then we put 55 into the rehab and all
Okay.
cash still. And it penciled out at 160,000. So we got all our money back and we got about 50, what is it, 50K in equity or so.
Okay. That's awesome.
So yeah, it was a perfect BRRRR. This stuff works because like
Yeah. How was the renovation? What work did you have to do?
If I remember on that one, it was just kind of the main stuff. Like we had to do drywall, paint, new cabinets. My contractor had some super deal on quartz or something, so we put quartz in a rental, which you don't really have to do that. But she was able to do it for 2 or 3,000, which was ridiculous. We finished out a basement. We did a good job. I think that was kind of it. It was like a 1,500 square foot house. I still own the house to this day. Like the funny thing is, I still have the same renter.
Nice.
This guy never contacts me and just pays every month. So
That's
he's
the
awesome.
That's the best kind of tenant.
Best tenant, and we're like a 3% interest rate. So
nice.
That's been a perfect BRRRR and
keep it forever.
Yep, exactly. That's my goal. It's in a great little neighborhood too. It's probably, we refied it in like 2020 July, and it was at 160. I think now it's probably worth like 210 or 220.
Nice. How did you find the deal? Was it brought to you by a realtor, or did you
No,
find it?
It was on a wholesaling site.
Okay.
So when I went into Detroit, I just joined the Facebook group. What I suggest people do, like when they look for their market, go into the like city and go to the Facebook group, and you'll see the wholesalers will post all their deals.
Yeah.
And they usually post their contact information too. You can just click on that and like just contact them and get subscribed to their list. And then you'll get emailed for their stuff as well. So I think it just came through an email.
That's something I do here in the Bay Area, and I feel a lot of them is just spam. How did you vet them or filter out the bad ones from the good ones? Just
Yeah, I
talking to
think
them.
when somebody starts, you're not going to know the difference between what is a good deal and a bad deal. And so you just have to start somewhere and just start analyzing these.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, you'll kind of fine tune what areas are you looking for, number one, in the city. And number two, you'll be able to look at the purchase price and look at the area, and you'll kind of know if that's a good deal or not. Especially if you do 100 of these. Say you do this like one a day or something for like a month or two. At that point, you'll finally get a grip on what a good deal looks like. I remember seeing they asked it like 65 or something, 65,000 like Backley. I'm like, okay, that could be a deal. Then we offered it like 45 or something, got it for 47.
Nice. It sounds like it went perfectly smooth. Was there any like hiccups or anything that went wrong during that first one?
I think it was just slow. It took like 6 months, which isn't terrible. I've had worse problems with contractors than the first one, and honestly, I got pretty lucky with the first one.
Nice. Okay. So that first one goes pretty well. You have a success, and this gives you a huge aha moment, proof of concept, right? So maybe talk about moving forward. What your next several were like.
Yeah. So the next one.
Were the next several all BRRRRs also, or when did you start getting
Yeah,
the
it was
flips?
just for until 2020, when the interest rates go up, like 2023 or so. I was mostly doing BRRRRs. I would do a flip every once in a while if the purchase price was too high.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's certain neighborhoods in Detroit where I only can do flips. So I was doing that. But I was mostly focused on BRRRR, just like 'cause I knew building portfolio over time would be a better strategy than like getting flips and tax super high on it. And so that was my goal until the interest rates got super high. And then at that point I'm like, I already have the team and the thing in place. I might as well just keep flipping and like still making money from this.
Were you able to recycle all of your money out of all those first couple BRRRRs, or did you have to eventually
No,
like
there's
start?
definitely some bad ones in there. I think I got stuck with like 20K in like 2 or 3 of them. trying to think of some days. Yeah, I think the second one I did, I got stuck with about 20,000 in that one.
Yeah, I'm always trying to learn more from other people and just have the failures, because I think those are what people really learn from.
Yes. All right, so the second one, I sent out direct mailing to people. And then one of these guys like answered my thing. Is like, oh, okay, I'm selling my house. And then in Detroit, like what the deal is there's the largest owner of houses is the Detroit Land Bank. If you don't know what Land Bank is, it's a city. The city owns a bunch of houses. They're trying to sell it and like force you to renovate the property. When people were seeing at one point, they're like, oh, there's these houses that are selling for $1 in Detroit. Like that's what they're looking at, like these land bank houses. That the city takes over from property tax foreclosure. So essentially, this guy had a house that he bought off the land bank. And what the deal is the city has a lien on the house until you get it renovated to a certain point. And so this guy didn't have enough money to get it to that certain point. So I was like, all right, I'll be on the deed with you and I'll like renovate it to like this point, and then we'll have a contract where I can buy it at this point, like 52,000 or something. So I get on the deed with him as like a tenant in common or something. Then I renovated it to perfect house. And then at that point, the guy's like, you took like 2 months longer than I wanted, so now I want 8,000 more than we originally agreed upon. I was like pretty pissed off about that.
Yeah.
But I like my hands were tied behind my back. What we originally agreed to was like 52,000. And then after the rehab, he wanted 60,000. We were tenants in common, and I knew the house was worth 160,000. So he had 80,000 worth of property right there. So he could ask for 60,000. That's a super long story, but I would say make sure contracts are super buttoned up before you partner with somebody, get on a deal. There's been many times where what it originally agreed upon just does not materialize in the end.
I agree. Having really good contracts in place, someone can seem very nice when things are going well, but as soon as shit hits the fan, then obviously things go very badly. And so I think it's important just to have that in writing and not just go based on a handshake deal.
Sure. Because I think a handshake deal, like, people interpret things differently, and it's easy to skew facts when there's a lot of money.
Okay. Well, is that the biggest learning lesson that you've had thus far? What's the biggest?
I mean, I've had a lot of them. I'm going to tell you, if you're investing in Detroit right now, the main thing is like, when your property hits the market, like make sure you have a house sitter or something, because your furnace more than likely will get stolen if you do not have a house sitter. It's just the reality of selling houses in Detroit. I've had 2 or 3 furnaces stolen in Detroit. The funny thing is, one of them got stolen directly after I bought it. So I bought the house. I put insurance on day 1 I bought it. Day 3, we're getting ready to do demo. You realize the furnaces got stolen. And it was actually a blessing in disguise, because I got like $15K from the insurance company. And these 2 furnaces were not worth $15K. It's like 7 or 8K or something.
Yeah.
So I got a 7K raise just from people stealing my furnaces.
Damn.
So, yeah, you guys can do that anytime you want.
Do you have any issues with like breaking in, or if you get all your properties staged when you have them like listed? Have anything like that like broken into, or?
I actually haven't had one where it's staged and gets broken into. I think in Detroit, when you put it on Zillow, what I found is like, Zillow and it looks empty, like that's when you should be the most worried.
Interesting. How do you find these sitters to literally just like watch your house at night?
So I have workers that I make a deal with them. I'm like, hey, like, work on the house and like sit in. If you want to live in the house too, go ahead.
So you did a bunch of BRRRRs. At what point did you say you started to get into the flips?
2023, I think. Or 2024.
Okay. And is everything that you're getting off of the Facebook groups, like the wholesalers and all that stuff?
The funny thing, like recently, I have a good agent that's been helping me find just investment stuff on the MLS. So what I've been doing recently is just hardcore lowballing MLS stuff that's been on the market for like 80 or 90 days. And I think that's kind of underrated, because I think a lot of people don't look at MLS stuff a lot, because they're like, oh, it's overpriced, which usually it is. But I think when it's been on the market for 80 or 90 days, people start to get pretty desperate at that point. So you can pretty lowball hardcore. And if you're the one buyer that's going to come in the next like 3 or 4 weeks, they'll work with you pretty hard on it.
I agree. I mean, that's how I got my first deal. That's how I got my third deal. So my first one was listed on the market for 60 days. Fell in and out of contract twice. I think it was initially listed for like $890. We ended up getting it for $810. So that's like $80,000 off. And then my third property was listed for $1,050,000. We got it down to $780,000.
There you go. It's stuff like that. Final
Yeah.
choice, like 280 and 180, 280, like 200. It's not like we're not talking big numbers here.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think more people need to do it. I'm always looking on the MLS and Redfin and Zillow. It's just hard when you have a full-time job. And so that's why it's good to lean on someone like you have. You got a really good realtor.
Yeah, recently my realtor's been really good. I'd say I got more deals from wholesalers, but also my realtor's been helping me find a lot of stuff recently.
Nice. What's
Uh,
been your favorite flip?
so I got a house for 119 recently, and I put 85 into it, and then we just sold it for 320.
Nice.
So yeah, I think all said and done, about 80K, 80 to 90K spread on it.
And how long did that take?
It took about 6 months. Yeah, it wasn't like the speed was wasn't as good as I wanted, but so the holding costs were relatively high. But yeah, it was a super good flip. I think it was on the MLS for about 50 days.
That's awesome. I think once you start getting those big wins and seeing good things happen, it just motivates you even more.
For sure, yeah. So now I'm in the middle of like five of them.
So you're doing 5 right now simultaneously. Is this the most you've done?
Yeah, so last time I did four. So last time I tried scaling probably was like a year and a half ago. I was doing four. And then my contractor was going super slow on it. So I had to go to Detroit and start doing the subcontracting stuff. And the deals didn't end up doing too bad, but it was not optimal. And I realized I need to be a lot more on top of managing my stuff. When you're doing one, you can super focus on the details on that one house. When you're doing four or five, you need to like make sure the general contractor is like managing your stuff correctly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the lessons I've had to learn along the way.
Okay. Maybe we could talk about your systems and processes that have made all this possible, especially from doing it from Seattle and just juggling 4 or 5 at the same time.
Sure.
What do you think's been some really big tips or successful things to scale up?
To scale up, I think if you read the David Green book, I kind of follow what he's stated in there as well. Having your recommended lender, have a recommended general contractor, have your realtor. I think if you have those main three, like that's kind of the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
When you have those main three, that'll go a very long way in this business. If you're able to have those three, they'll find you deals all the time. You'll have a GC that is able to do these. I think the GC is the number one. If you're able to have a GC that's able to just knock out these things in 3 to 4 months and consistently updates you all the time on the progress and does these things within budget, like and not charging you super retail prices, that's worth its weight in gold, honestly. It takes people forever to find these people.
Yeah. How'd you find your GC?
So I had a good relationship with my flooring person. My flooring person's like, oh, I've worked with this guy for 4 houses now, and he gives me updates every day. He's calling me about small stuff, which is awesome.
Is he doing a lot of the design stuff, or how hands-on are you?
So the design thing, I found a good designer that she'll do a walkthrough and provide me like a PowerPoint with like all the fixtures, just all the paint colors for $550. So like, anytime I buy a new house, I have her walk through it, and she'll give me like the design she thinks would be best. She gives me layout tips too, like how she thinks the kitchen should be laid out. And then like if we want to add a bathroom somewhere, she provides that too. And I do like FaceTime with her for an hour. So anytime I do a new house, I think it's totally worth like my ROI is like 10x the $550 I pay this designer to give me a 10-page PowerPoint. And then I take this PowerPoint and just give it to the GC.
And then he chooses all the like fixtures and color, just like eyeballing it based off the PowerPoint.
Yeah, so the PowerPoint, it has all the SKUs of all the fixtures and the
links
colors that she wants, and then she just buys it. He buys it right off the.
Sounds like you're very hands off.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be a balance between super hands off and like super hands on, because I can't have what happened to me again 2 years ago, where I'm super hands off, then I kind of let it run wild for like a month or two, and then we go, no, like we're way off where we need to be. So yeah, it's definitely a balance for anybody working out of state. Like you have to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Did you at any point ever have partners on anything, or how are you able to do all this and get all the funding?
Yeah, so all the properties I'm doing right now, I'm just doing by myself. Like in an ideal world, I'd rather do that. I do by myself, and then I do have a couple people that they do personal loans as well. So that's great too. The personal loan, they'll put a guarantee on me to pay them back. But the personal loan allows me to do that, and then I can get a hard money on top of that. So it's definitely a lot of interest every month. So I have to get through the project fast.
Yeah.
Like if I'm never using my own money, I could do infinite properties, right? Like that's an ideal world. And so, yeah, I'm currently doing 5. I've had to put some of my own money into it, and I want to still have reserves as well, so things don't get really stressful. So I'm not buying anything else with my own funds at this point. I think my limit right now is 5, and I'm currently looking at 2 more deals, and I would do a partnership on these.
Okay.
One of the guys I do partnerships is Jasper, who introduced me to you.
Yeah.
So we're
Shout out to Jasper.
Yeah, Jasper, what up? So yeah, usually we figure out some type of partnership deal. What I've liked recently so far is I give them, so we've done like a 65-35. So I take 65-35, but I give him priority. So I'll be like, okay, we're looking at like a $70,000 profit on this property. I'll give you 35% of that. Like, but no matter what, like almost no matter what, like before I earn a dime, you'll get that 35%.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much impossible to just do everything yourself, especially at some point. I mean, everyone just runs out of money, so it's really important to partner with people. Obviously, do due diligence and find good partners. Don't just dive into it. Really vet them and start dating them, get to know them, because as you know, once money is involved, it's not just a regular relationship, and so things can go south very quickly.
I've lost friends like doing partnerships before, just like because deals didn't pan out as we wanted it to. So like you definitely have to like make everything clear, and like I definitely like I tell people a lower estimate like on profit wise than I actually think it could do. I don't want to highball people ever, because like then you give these people these super high like aspirations, and then they're like, oh, we didn't make like 200,000 from this thing or whatever. If you find a deal and you want to partner with somebody, don't give them your highest projected numbers. I'd rather lowball them and then have it turn out better than what you say. Then we'll be super happy with the expectations.
Under promise and over deliver.
There you go.
It's always how it should be, for sure.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome, dude. Seems like you've had a lot of success so far. How much time do you think you spend between Microsoft a day or week and then spend on the real estate business?
I'd say I spend at least an hour a day, at least an hour to hour and a half a day. So what is that times 7 business?
Not too bad. So what are you most excited for 2025?
I really want to scale this year more. So I put on my wall. I actually printed on my wall here that I want to do 20 flips this year. So that's my goal for 2025.
Okay.
Like I really want to figure out the scaling game. Like I took a hack at it last time, and I didn't have my contractor. I didn't have my management system set up well enough. So this one time I want to take another hack at it and do better. And I think I have more experience now to be able to manage more of a scaled flipping operation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing 5 at a time, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Do you ever plan to move everything? You already have all your systems and processes and people in place in Detroit, but at some point, do you think you ever want to just move it locally to Seattle or another place?
Yeah, I've thought about that. Seattle, there's definitely more profit if you're able to figure that out. I think the thing is, like, I already have such a good pipeline in Detroit. It's hard for me to want to just like get rid of it. I know how to find deals. I know the neighborhoods. Like things are so much easier than me starting to carve away at Seattle now. Yeah. Figuring out what neighborhood should I go into. And Seattle is definitely an interesting game as well, because a lot of Seattle's game is more of like finding single family lot, or like finding lots that are bigger than what is currently on the lot. I see a lot of these people are like raising the house, and they're not, sometimes they don't raise the house, but they add ADUs, if you know what a dadu is. So they add ADUs in the back, or they attach an ADU to a house, and that's how they add the equity. Mm-hmm. So it's a different game than Detroit, because in Detroit we're like regular flipping houses, right? We're not doing anything crazy new construction stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the Seattle game. So if I moved to Seattle, I'd have to learn that, which I definitely could.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing in Bay Area too? Are you having to do dadu like new construction stuff, or?
I have not dived into that yet, but I know a lot of people are doing that. They're doing extensions of houses. They're doing ADUs. ADUs are a really big play because, there's just nowhere to freaking build here. And so people, what they do is just buy in Palo Alto a freaking $2 million shithole and then tear it down and then just do totally new constructions. And so that's what a lot of people, developers who have a lot of money, are doing. But on the outskirts, an hour out, people are still doing regular flipping.
Yeah, I know it's kind of a cash suck too. Like I know, like if I'm gonna do something like that, like I probably have to keep somewhere between like 100 to 200K in the house, like just building that dadu.
Yeah.
Like, even if I use hard money, like I'd have to keep that money in the house for a while.
Yeah. What lender are you using?
So there's a lender, Dominion Financial. They're based out of Baltimore. What are you using?
I use Kiavi right now.
What's the name of it?
It's called Kiavi. They're based out of San Francisco here. There's also a couple more here based on the East Coast. There's one from Seattle called Iron Bridge Lending. I don't know if you've heard
Okay.
about them. There's another one here in the Bay Area called Convectus, but I've only used Kiavi so far. And
What
with
type
them,
of points and interest rate are you getting?
my interest rate right now is 10.5, and the
Oh,
points
nice.
are anywhere from like 1.5 to 2.
Oh, cool. I might have to use them then because I think I'm at like 11 or 2. So my credit score isn't that bad. So
Yeah.
yeah, I might be interested in picking that up from you.
Yeah, for sure. The Iron Bridge one said like 1 point, especially if you already have a good background and all that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, no, I definitely should. Yeah, no, it's definitely good.
Yeah, I'll share it all with you.
Check that out.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to get started in real estate, doesn't really know what to do? There's a million ways to make money in real estate, whether that's BRRRRing, flipping, wholesaling. What advice would you give to someone?
Yeah, I think you probably talked to a lot of people on this podcast, and I think there's like 101 ways to make a lot of money in real estate. And so I think the main thing is do whatever you get passionate about. If you really love calling people every day and trying to find deals every day, then do wholesaling. People made a ton of money off flipping. People made a ton of money off rentals. People made a ton of money off multifamily. So really, it's whatever you feel passionate about is kind of the main thing I tell people. It's kind of cliche, but I think it's true. Whatever keeps making you consistently do something, I think that's the main thing about this business. Like, people get punched a lot. Like if you're able to keep doing it, that's what I recommend people do.
Find something that aligns with you, and then also just stick with it, because it's very easy to have shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
And then just be like, oh, wow, he's making money doing that. Maybe I'll try that, before you actually get good at the thing you started
Yeah,
at.
exactly. I always see people doing these huge apartment deals or whatever. I'm like, oh, I should get into like syndications or whatever. I'm like, that happens for like everything now. I'm like, oh, like this guy's making $1 million a year doing wholesales or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I struggle with too, but I know right now I'm just like blinders on, flipping. But yeah. I think if it could just focus on that, that's all I want to do right now before I get into anything else.
Exactly. So I'd say get to a point where you're perfecting it. For me, if I'm able to do 20 flips a year, maybe at that point, then I'll go into more of I'll build capital stack and I'll go more into apartment building and maybe new construction or buying apartments and renovating those.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I still feel I need to perfect the flipping, and I don't know about you as well.
Yes, I feel a lot more confident going into things. I mean, right now I'm doing a burn property, and so that's definitely a pretty big project. But I know from this one, I'll have a lot more confidence to do the next one. So it's a stepping stone game. It's knowing that each one gets better and you get more confidence doing the next one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I guess back to the original question for people starting out, like, you're going to have analysis paralysis. I think me and you both said it took at least 6 to 8 months picking up the first book, buying the first property.
Mm-hmm.
In that time frame, I remember there's just a lot of like, what is the use of doing this? I just keep reading books, but like, I feel useless right now because I'm doing all this stuff. I'm not getting any fruit for any of this labor. And I think you just have to keep making small progress every day. At the start is where a lot of people give up. But if you're like, okay, today I'm just going to call a realtor. And then, okay, today I'm going to analyze one deal or something. And then if you just keep making strides, small strides, is a snowball effect, right?
Yep.
And slowly the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's how you have to think about it. Well, you can't look at the elephant right now and be like, okay, Nick's doing 5 deals right now. I should be doing that within a year or something. You have to think about the snowball and like just take one step forward every day, and you'll slowly grow that confidence, like you're saying.
Yeah, it's just like the compound effect. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but pretty much exactly what you talked about. Just 1% better every day. It just builds to big things.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. Like at the start, it's like so hard because like there's a ton of juice for nothing, like a ton of effort for nothing, essentially. But when you get that first deal too, it's like super rewarding, and like you're like, oh man, like I'm a real estate investor. Then you lose like 40 grand in your first deal, and you're like, oh, this thing sucks. And you do the second one, then you make 80 grand, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. So It's like it's a roller coaster. It's super fun.
Exactly. At what point are you gonna quit Microsoft and go into this full time? Do you want to?
I don't know. Like, I feel like my goal is to do 20, and like my goal is to do 20 this year, and I'd love to make $1 million. And like, if I'm able to do that, like, what's the point of me continue to work at Microsoft if I'm able to do that in flipping houses? And so I think if I'm able to hit that, like, then I'd say maybe at the end of this year. it's just Microsoft's very secure as well. So it's definitely hard. It would be a hard decision for me.
Yeah. Well, you will definitely get there. Believe it, and just put it into the universe.
I
Well,
love it.
Nick, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Nick and then .Sehy, S is in Sam, E is in Edward, H is in Hat, Y is in Yellow. And on there, actually, I set up a Calendly link, so anybody can just chat with me for 30 minutes. So for now, until I become super famous, people can, I'm happy to chat with people about real estate. Like I'm an open book and happy to help people out.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love it, man. Well,
yeah,
thank you, Nick. I appreciate you taking the time. You're a super humble guy, and you're always willing to share information. So I appreciate you big time.
for sure, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right, everyone. I hope you guys enjoy the show. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Peace.